The words hit me like a slap across the face, but in a glass-walled conference room with 12 witnesses watching. "Let's be realistic, Alex," CEO Brandon Walsh said, his voice dripping with dismissal. "Your role here is supportive at best. You are, well, replaceable." The room went silent. I could feel every eye on me, waiting for tears, for anger, for something. My colleague Sam looked like someone had kicked him. The clients across the table shifted uncomfortably. I'd spent 7 years at Apex Solutions, working late nights, fixing Brandon's mistakes, training people who got promoted over me. 7 years of loyalty, and this was my reward. I took a slow breath, met Brandon's smug gaze, and gave him the calmest smile I could manage. "I understand completely," I said, my voice steady. "I'll make sure to follow company policy going forward." Brandon nodded, satisfied he'd put me in my place. He had no idea what those words actually meant. No idea at all. The walk back to my desk felt like swimming through mud. Every step echoed in my head. The office had gone quiet, that awful silence when everyone knows something terrible just happened but nobody wants to acknowledge it. I could feel their pity burning into my back. Sam caught up with me halfway, his face red with anger. "Alex, that was completely out of line. Everyone knows you practically run this place." I patted his shoulder without stopping. "It's fine, Sam." "Really?" But it wasn't fine. My hands were shaking as I sat down at my desk. I pulled out the bottom drawer and grabbed the thick blue binder I kept there. The employee handbook. I'd read it cover to cover when I started here, and I'd watched Brandon violate it repeatedly over the years. I flipped to page 47, the section on ethical compliance and whistleblower protection. The section Brandon himself had proudly announced during a company meeting 3 years ago. Time to see if he actually meant any of it. My mind drifted back to my second month at Apex Solutions. Brandon had just been promoted to senior manager, full of big ideas and zero attention to detail. He'd promised a major client a software rollout in 2 weeks when the actual timeline was 6. I'd found the error at 9 p.m. on a Friday, stayed until 4 a.m. recoding the entire demo module, and saved the account. Brandon had walked in Monday morning, saw the completed work, and actually hugged me. "Alex, you're a lifesaver. I won't forget this." He'd bought me lunch that week, told everyone I was his secret weapon. But when promotion time came, he gave it to his college buddy who'd been there 3 months. "You understand, right? Mitchell has leadership qualities." I'd nodded and smiled, told myself it was about the team, not personal glory. I'd believed in the mission then. Believed that good work would be recognized eventually. That Brandon was just young and would grow into his role. How stupid I'd been. Over the next 3 years, I became the company's invisible backbone. When Brandon sent hostile emails to clients, I'd smooth things over with careful follow-ups. When new hires got promoted too fast and made costly mistakes, I'd stay late fixing them without complaint. When our accounting department nearly filed incorrect compliance reports that could have triggered federal audits, I'd caught it and spent a weekend correcting everything. Nobody asked me to do these things. I just did them because I cared about our team, about our clients, about doing things right. Brandon took credit for the smooth operations, the happy clients, the clean audits. He'd pat my shoulder and say things like, "Great support work, Alex. This is why we keep you around." I'd memorized every procedure, every regulation, every policy. I knew how the company actually ran versus how it claimed to run. And that gap between reality and pretense? That was about to become very important. 2 days after the humiliating meeting, Brandon sent an email that made my blood run cold. "Team, we're accelerating the Titan project launch from March to January. No time for the usual quality protocols. Skip the secondary testing phase and just certify it ready. The board wants results, and we're going to deliver." I stared at my screen, reading it 3 times. The secondary testing phase wasn't optional. It was legally required in 2 states where we operated. Skipping it meant shipping potentially unsafe software to hospitals and emergency services. People could get hurt. Lives could be at risk. The rest of the team saw the email. They looked at me, because they always looked to me when Brandon made reckless calls. Sam walked over, his voice low. "This can't be legal." I pulled up the state regulations on my screen. "It's not." Brandon sent another message: "No debate. No delays. Just execute. Meeting in 10 minutes. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at two things. The first was my employee handbook, open to the ethical compliance section. The second was a framed photo of my younger sister's graduation. She was a nurse. She'd be the kind of person relying on software like what we were about to ship untested. I thought about my mortgage, my car payment, my savings that would last maybe 4 months if I lost this job. I thought about 7 years of unpaid overtime, of fixing Brandon's disasters, of being called replaceable in front of everyone. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from humiliation. It was from clarity. Brandon had given me explicit permission to follow company policy. He'd even witnessed it in that conference room, with clients present. I opened my laptop, created a new encrypted document, and started typing. Every policy Brandon had violated. Every shortcut he'd demanded. Every regulation he'd ignored. And then I began my response email, citing policy chapter and verse. My email went out at 7 a.m. the next morning. "Brandon, I've reviewed your directive regarding the Titan project timeline. Per Employee Handbook Section 12.4 and Company Policy Manual Section 301, any deviation from established safety and quality protocols requires written approval from the Executive Board and Legal Department. I'm attaching the relevant forms for your signature. I've copied legal and compliance as required by Section 12.4(c). Looking forward to proceeding properly." I hit send and waited. My phone rang 12 minutes later. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Alex, what is this?" His voice was tight with fury. "It's company policy," I said calmly. "The policy you told me to follow. Don't be ridiculous. Just do what I asked." "I can't do that without proper authorization. It's literally against policy. Would you like me to walk you through the handbook?" The silence on the other end lasted 5 seconds. "We'll discuss this in person." He hung up. I smiled and saved the call log. Over the next week, I followed every single procedural step with meticulous precision. Every request got routed through proper channels. Every decision got documented. Every shortcut Brandon demanded got translated into a policy-compliant process that took 3 times as long. The Titan project ground to a crawl. Brandon's carefully promised launch date began to slip away like sand through his fingers. I learned something interesting during this time. Brandon had promised the board a January 15th launch. He'd guaranteed it in writing to secure his quarterly bonus. That bonus was tied to meeting the deadline. Without it, he'd miss his target for the 3rd quarter in a row. The board was already questioning his leadership. This was his last chance to prove himself. And I was systematically dismantling his timeline by simply following the rules he'd spent years ignoring. On day 8, Brandon appeared at my desk, his face red. My office. Now. Brandon's office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He shut the door hard enough that the glass rattled. "What are you doing?" he demanded. I sat down calmly. "I'm following company policy. Like you instructed. You're sabotaging the launch. I'm ensuring we don't face federal violations." His jaw clenched. "Alex, let me be clear. You're on thin ice. Very thin. Remember what I said about being replaceable? I meant it. Keep this up, and you'll be gone by Friday." I pulled out my phone, pressed record, and set it face up on his desk. "I want to make sure I understand this correctly. You're threatening my employment because I'm following the compliance policies you personally approved?" Brandon's eyes went wide. You're recording this? Single-party consent state, I said. Completely legal. Now, would you like to repeat that threat? He stared at the phone, then at me. His voice dropped. Just make the launch happen. I will. Following every policy to the letter. I stood up, took my phone, and walked out. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. That weekend, I built my case. 7 years of emails, policy violations, documented warnings Brandon had ignored. I organized everything chronologically in a secure cloud folder. Evidence of budget manipulation. Proof he'd ordered teams to falsify testing data on previous projects. Records of safety complaints he'd dismissed. Every time he'd chosen speed over ethics, profit over people. Sam provided a crucial piece on Sunday night, an email chain where Brandon had explicitly told the development team to mark incomplete features as tested and verified for a client demo. Sam had kept it because it had bothered him, but he'd been too afraid to speak up. Are you really doing this? He asked me at a coffee shop, sliding the printed emails across the table. I looked at him. He called me replaceable, Sam. Then he ordered us to break the law. Yeah, I'm really doing this. Sam nodded slowly. Good. Someone needs to. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. Brandon had scheduled an emergency board presentation about the Titan project. He swaggered into the office at 8 a.m., all confidence and expensive cologne. Board meeting at 2, he announced to the team. I'll be showing them our progress. This launch is going to make Apex Solutions the industry leader. I kept my face neutral. At 1:45 p.m., my phone buzzed with a calendar invite. Board members would like you to present the operational compliance overview. 2:30 p.m. My stomach flipped. Brandon's presentation went smoothly until a board member asked a technical question about our testing protocols. Brandon stumbled, recovered poorly, then smiled. My operations lead, Alex, handles those specific details. The compliance is flawless. The board chair, a severe woman named Victoria, made a note. We'd like Alex to present a compliance overview. Next week? Brandon's smile never wavered. Of course. Alex will put something together. As we left, he leaned close. Keep it simple. Just show them we're ready. The next morning, Brandon called me into his office with a completely different demeanor. Friendly, almost warm. He gestured to a chair. Alex, I want to apologize for last week. I was under a lot of stress. I said nothing. He continued, I've been thinking. After this launch, I'm creating a new senior operations role. Significant raise. Direct report to me. It's yours. My heart should have jumped. Instead, I felt cold. That's generous. You've earned it. Just need you to give the board a clean presentation. Simple, positive. Show them we're on track. Can you do that? He was bribing me. Offering a verbal promise, nothing in writing, in exchange for lying to the board. I smiled. I'll prepare the presentation. Brandon relaxed. Knew I could count on you. I walked back to my desk and opened 2 PowerPoint templates. One was simple and glowing, exactly what Brandon expected. The other told the truth. That afternoon, I used the whistleblower protection clause to request a confidential meeting with the board's external counsel. They agreed immediately. I spent 3 nights preparing the real presentation. Every slide was documented, sourced, and unassailable. I didn't editorialize. I didn't exaggerate. I just presented facts, the policies we had, the shortcuts Brandon demanded, the risks we were taking, the laws we were breaking. I sent the presentation to the external counsel, a lawyer named Patricia Monroe, at 11 p.m. the night before the board meeting. Her response came at 11:47 p.m., received. This is extremely serious. The board chair has been notified. You're protected under whistleblower provisions. See you tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. I rehearsed the presentation 17 times in my empty living room. I imagined Brandon's face. The board's reaction. I thought about my sister, about Sam, about every person who'd ever been called replaceable by someone who mistook kindness for weakness. At 6 a.m., I put on my best suit and drove to the office. Game day. The boardroom was intimidating. Dark wood paneling, a massive table, leather chairs. All 7 board members were present, along with Patricia Monroe and 2 other lawyers I didn't recognize. Brandon sat at the head of the table, relaxed and confident. He saw me walk in and smiled. Alex. Come in, come in. Everyone, this is our detail person. Detail person. Not operations lead. Not the backbone of the company. Detail person. Victoria, the board chair, looked at me with sharp eyes. Thank you for being here, Alex. We've asked you to present on operational compliance and risk management for the Titan project. Brandon assures us everything is flawless. We'd like your assessment. I plugged my laptop into the projector. Brandon was still smiling. I clicked to the first slide. The title appeared on the massive screen, Operational Integrity and Systemic Risk, a 7-year analysis. Brandon's smile flickered. I began, thank you for this opportunity. My presentation examines the gap between our stated policies and our actual practices. I didn't start with the violations. That would have been too aggressive, too easy to dismiss as revenge. Instead, I started with success stories. In 2019, Apex Solutions avoided a federal audit because someone caught accounting errors before submission. In 2021, we retained the Sterling account when someone spent a weekend rebuilding a demo after promising an impossible timeline. In 2022, we prevented a major security breach because someone noticed unusual patterns in our system logs. I clicked through slides showing each success. Brandon's smile was completely gone now. He was leaning forward, confused. These aren't documented in company records, I continued, because the person who did this work wasn't doing it for credit. They did it because they believed in this company's mission. I looked directly at Victoria. That person was me. And for 7 years, I've watched the gap between what we promise and what we deliver grow wider. I clicked to the next slide, the policy versus the practice. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The next 15 slides were devastating. I showed Brandon's email ordering the team to skip legally required testing. I displayed the state regulations we'd be violating. I presented previous projects where he'd ordered false certifications, with copies of the original emails. I showed the budget manipulations, the ignored safety warnings, the systematic prioritization of speed over ethics. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't editorialize. I just read the emails in Brandon's own words and showed the policies he'd violated. Patricia Monroe's face was stone. The board members were taking furious notes. Brandon stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loud against the floor. This is ridiculous. This is a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage our launch. His voice was shaking. Victoria's voice cut through like a knife. Sit down, Mr. Walsh. I clicked to the next slide. It was a transcript of our conversation in his office, with a timestamp. I'm ensuring we don't face federal violations, I'd said. His response, you're on thin ice. Keep this up, and you'll be gone by Friday. Victoria looked at Brandon, then at me. Did you record that conversation? Yes. Single-party consent state. Completely legal. Patricia spoke up. The whistleblower protection clause explicitly protects documentation of retaliatory threats. Victoria nodded slowly. Mr. Walsh, did you threaten Ms. Alex Jordan's employment for following compliance procedures? Brandon's face was pale. I was, that's not, she's taking it out of context. Is Sam Winters in the building? Victoria asked. I nodded. He's outside. Victoria pressed the intercom. Please send Sam Winters in. Sam entered looking terrified. Victoria asked him directly, did you witness Brandon Walsh order the team to skip required testing protocols? Sam glanced at Brandon, then at me. He straightened his shoulders. Yes. Multiple times. Did he ever order you to falsify testing data? Sam swallowed hard. On the Sentinel project last year. He told us to mark features as tested when they weren't. 2 other board members I hadn't even asked were nodding now, confirming what Sam said matched their own observations. Patricia stood up. Based on this evidence, the Titan project launch as currently planned violates federal safety regulations in at least 2 jurisdictions. If we proceed, the company faces massive liability. She clicked through legal precedents on her own laptop. Similar violations have resulted in fines exceeding $40 million and criminal charges against executive leadership. The blood drained from Brandon's face. We can fix it. We can delay the launch, do the proper testing, the launch you personally guaranteed to this board in writing, Victoria interrupted, pulling out a document. The launch you tied to your quarterly bonus. The launch you promised for January 15th, which is 8 days from now. She looked at Patricia. What's the realistic timeline for proper compliance? Minimum 12 weeks with full testing protocols. Victoria turned back to Brandon. You made a promise you knew was impossible to keep. You attempted to pressure your staff into breaking federal law. You threatened an employee for following the very policies you approved. She paused. Do you have anything to say? Brandon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The silence stretched for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. Brandon looked around the table at faces that had once respected him. Now they looked at him with disgust. I was trying to save the company, he finally whispered. By destroying it? Victoria's voice was ice. You've exposed us to catastrophic legal liability. You've created a hostile work environment. You've systematically violated our ethical standards. She looked at the other board members. They nodded. Brandon Walsh, you're placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out. You're prohibited from contacting any company employees. Brandon stood, his legs shaking. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw pure hatred in his eyes. Then he walked out. The door closed. Victoria turned to me. Ms. Jordan, what do you recommend we do now? Every eye in the room was on me. The woman they'd never heard of until 20 minutes ago. The replaceable detail person. I took a breath. We need a complete operational audit, I said. Every project, every timeline, every compliance issue that's been glossed over. It'll take 3 months minimum. I pulled up a document I'd prepared. We need to implement a proper compliance review process with external oversight. We need to retrain the entire leadership team on ethical obligations. I clicked through the proposal. The Titan project needs to be delayed and rebuilt properly. Yes, we'll lose the January launch. But if we launch it broken, we'll lose everything. I showed them a timeline. Done right, we can launch in April with a product that's actually revolutionary. Done wrong, we launch in January with something that gets people hurt and destroys our reputation. Victoria was nodding. What about the board's commitment? We promised our investors, would you rather explain a 3-month delay or a $40 million lawsuit? I asked quietly. The room went silent. Patricia smiled slightly. Ms. Jordan is right. This saves the company. Victoria looked at the other board members. All in favor? 6 hands went up. It was unanimous. The next week was chaos. Brandon's administrative leave became permanent termination after the audit uncovered even more violations. The office buzzed with rumors and speculation. People kept asking me what happened in that boardroom. I didn't tell them. Sam did though. He couldn't help himself. By Wednesday, everyone knew I'd presented evidence to the board. Some people looked at me with new respect. Others avoided eye contact, probably wondering if they'd be next. The head of HR called me in on Friday. My heart sank, wondering if they'd find a way to push me out anyway despite the whistleblower protections. Instead, Victoria was sitting there. "Ms. Jordan, the board would like to offer you Brandon's position as CEO." My stomach flipped. "I appreciate that, but I have to decline." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why?" "Because I don't want to become him," I said honestly. "I don't want to lose sight of why I did this." Victoria studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "What if we created a new position?" Victoria asked. "Head of Integrity and Strategy, reporting directly to the board. Your job would be to rebuild our culture, implement proper compliance systems, and make sure we never end up in this situation again." I stared at her. "That's a real position?" "It is now. The board approved it this morning. Significant equity stake, full authority to audit any department, protected status." She slid a folder across the desk. "This is your offer letter. Take the weekend to think about it." I opened the folder. The salary was substantially more than I'd been making. The equity package was generous. But what caught my attention was the scope of authority. "The head of Integrity and Strategy shall have unrestricted access to all company operations, direct reporting to the board chair, and protected status with the authority to halt any project or decision that violates company policy or ethical standards." I looked up at Victoria. "You're serious?" "Completely. You saved this company, Alex. Now help us rebuild it properly." I asked for the weekend to decide. I took a week off for the first time in 7 years. I drove to the coast, stayed in a small hotel, and watched the ocean. I thought about Brandon calling me replaceable. I thought about 7 years of fixing other people's mistakes and never getting credit. I thought about that moment in the boardroom when every eye was on me, waiting for my recommendation. For so long, I'd believed that keeping my head down and doing good work was enough. That kindness was weakness. That patience was the same as being a doormat. But I'd been wrong about what my patience actually meant. It hadn't been weakness. It had been strategy. Every time I'd fixed Brandon's mistakes, I'd been learning how the company really worked. Every time I'd followed policy when he'd broken it, I'd been building a case. Every time I'd stayed calm when he'd been cruel, I'd been proving who the real adult in the room was. My kindness hadn't been naive. It had been armor. And my knowledge had been a weapon I'd been carefully sharpening for 7 years without even realizing it. I returned to the office on Monday and accepted the position. My first meeting was with Sam and the rest of my old team. "Sam, you're promoted to Senior Operations Manager," I said. "You stood up when it mattered. That takes courage." Sam's face lit up. Over the next 3 months, we rebuilt Apex Solutions from the ground up. New compliance systems. Transparent reporting. A real ethics hotline with actual protection for whistleblowers. We delayed 4 projects to do them properly. We lost 2 clients who wanted quick and dirty solutions. But we gained 3 new clients who specifically chose us because of our new reputation for integrity. The Titan project launched in April, 3 months late but absolutely perfect. It won industry awards. Hospitals praised its reliability. It saved lives. That was worth more than Brandon's bonus could ever have been. The culture shifted. People started speaking up when they saw problems instead of staying silent. The office felt different. Better. Real. I'd gone from replaceable to irreplaceable, not by changing who I was, but by refusing to become someone else. 6 months after that horrible meeting, I was leaving the office at 5:30 p.m., on time, for the first time in years, when I ran into an old colleague at a coffee shop. She'd left Apex Solutions 3 years ago. "Alex. I heard about what happened with Brandon. Everyone's talking about it." She leaned forward, curiosity bright in her eyes. "How did you do it? How did you take down a CEO? I thought about that question while I stirred my coffee. How did I do it? I didn't scream or fight. I didn't quit in a dramatic scene. I didn't post angry messages online. I just followed the policy. I documented everything. I stayed calm when he lost his temper. I was patient when he was reckless. I was kind when he was cruel. And when the moment came, I told the truth. I just followed company policy, I said finally. And I finally understood my own value. She laughed like I was joking. But I wasn't. I finished my coffee, said goodbye, and walked out onto the street. The evening sun was warm. The city was alive. And for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't walking back to fix someone else's disaster. I was walking toward a future I'd built myself. Replaceable. That's what Brandon had called me. He'd been wrong about a lot of things. But he'd been most wrong about that.